Creative Mornings Baltimore, please welcome Jessica Solomon to the stage.
Good morning. Hey, girl. Yes. Oh, my. It is really beautiful in this room. So many people that I love and like and troll are in this room. Before I start, if you came to this talk thinking that you were going to a grant workshop or learning about investing stocks, at least you got a good breakfast, right? Maybe you made a friend. I want to thank my friends and partners in the back, Maryland Philanthropy Network, Little Fish Accounting, and We Are Maud for bringing their amazing information and wares. So they do have information about ways to get some money, spend some money, save some money. My talk is more about my human beingness and less about my doingness. And I just think it's important to have spaces like that, especially today, because while invest is something that is close to me personally and professionally, you know, we're also people doing this work. So I am a third generation West Side salt, pepper, ketchup, salt, pepper, ketchup, Baltimorean. I am an empath. I am an extroverted introvert. I am a friend and a comrade and a mentee and a mentor. I'm an occasional contrarian. I'm a frequent hype woman. I am a 90s R&B connoisseur. Yeah. Yes. Ooh, yeah. I am a cultural worker. I'm an emerging philanthropist. I am mine. And I am a Black feminist who is wrestling with the word invest, really trying to understand what that means and how do I navigate my complicated feelings about that word. I can remember my grandparents' mortgage burning party. How many people know what a mortgage burning party is? Great. Essentially, it's when somebody pays off their mortgage, they burn it and celebrate. It's a ritual that is increasingly happening less and less often. And I can remember my grandparents' party. I was 9 years old. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it was exciting, and I knew it was important. And I can remember almost 20 years later, that same home, family home that was bought outright was seized by predatory tax lawyers and predatory real estate speculators. I can remember in 2011 launching my very first Gofundme campaign to help me get to New Orleans. I had been invited and accepted to participate in a leadership training that I knew would change my life. I knew it. And what I also knew was that I did not have the tuition, the money for tuition to get there. And so I decided to ask my community for help, and they showed up. And because of that, I was able to go. It did change my life, and I know I couldn't have made it without those people investing in me. And I can also remember quitting a job that everybody told me was the dream job. I may have pulled a Jerry Maguire moment. You know, I'm not gonna do what you think I'm gonna. I may have, that might have happened in the lobby on my way out, but I also remember that was the moment I made a deep commitment to always betting on myself. Those are just a few examples of the ways that word has shown up in my life, and I can go on with lots and lots of stories. But today I just want to share 3 principles related to the theme that I carry in my personal and professional practice. But before I jump in, I want to talk about a seminal text called Gin and Juice by controversial critical scholar Snoop Dogg, okay? And he says this really poignant thing in that text. You know, he said, I got my mind on my money. I knew y'all were going to get it. Now, that is admirable, and that is definitely important in some instances, but I also think it's important to know that money is not the only source of capital that we have at our disposal. And it's not the only source of capital and resource that we should keep our minds on. Things like nature, traditions, political power, knowledge, skills, relationships, networks, culture, material objects. These are all things and resources that we should have our minds on and think about as we want to grow and share. So I ask you today, what are you growing and sharing, and what are you not growing and sharing? Now, with that in mind, a few principles. Invest in yourself first, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. I'm actually headed to the airport right after this talk, and I'm just reminded of my favorite part of the flight, when the flight attendant tells you to put your oxygen mask on before helping others. And I just love it because it's not selfish. It's like, yeah, in order for me to help someone else, I have to make sure that I'm in a place to be able to help them. And I think oftentimes we forget that we should be included in that equation as well. As someone who reads proposals and budgets, one of the first things I look at in a proposal is the budget, because a budget is a story. It tells everyone where the priorities are and how you plan to execute your plan. And so when I'm looking at a budget, I'm also looking for the people who are doing the work. And so in a practical sense, I encourage all of us to think about ourselves as critical to the work that we do. And even if you can't write yourself a check or, have some kind of financial monetary gain from the work, write yourself in the budget. Even if it's pro bono, you should definitely be considered a part of the work. So that's a practical way to think about that. The next thing would be investing in people in place is really about shaping the future. So thinking like a futurist. When you decide to invest in yourself or your friends or an idea, you are actively shaping the world you want to see. And if we all thought about the way we invest in that way, I think we'd be better for it. When I made the ask for my friends and family to donate to my Gofundme campaign, and they did, I know it wasn't because they really were excited about me going to that training. They were investing in who I would be after that experience. And so that was a responsibility that I carried with me along that journey. And I'll also say, when we make a decision to invest in ideas, everybody will not understand. And that's okay. And it's important to find the people who share your values and understand why you made that decision. So once you find your people, think about yourselves as exponential. What does it mean to pool resources? One of the things I love about Baltimore is that there's so many collectives and groups and people who are coming together to support each other. Now I'm going on a tangent about birds, so bear with me. So when birds fly, there's a flock, and there's a bird in the front, and oftentimes the leader changes, and the birds are able to be agile because of the way the flock moves. When one bird gets injured in a flock and that bird goes down, 2 birds come down with that bird and sit with them until they're better or they've transitioned. And then those 2 birds, or 3, join the flock again. And that is so beautiful to me, and it just reminds me of the power of supporting each other, and no matter what, knowing that you'll be okay, and that you can always come back to the group. So I'm back. So that was birds now I'm back. So when you find your people, so when you decide to invest in ideas, you find your people, you grow as a group, it's also important to remember the vision that you are shaping when you can't see it. imagining a world where we all thrive, imagining a city, imagining a neighborhood, a block where we are all thriving is serious work. And it takes community to do that. And it takes investment in each other and that community to do that. The last principle I'll share is about reciprocity and generosity. Those are practices, which means that those things are active, they can grow. And as someone who is in the business of investing, it's not a one-way street, ever. And thinking about being invested in and what your role is, what your responsibility is to the people that you work on behalf of is important. And it's also great for people who invest to know about what that looks like. I tell people, if somebody builds a house, they don't necessarily eat dinner with the family in the house. They don't get a chance to ask them, like, did you like that closet I put in? Did you like that that extra little, molding? But I think beyond built environment and houses, as we invest in each other, there's a chance to go back and say, hey, because of this, we did this, or I learned this, or you should know that you should think about this next time. I think it's a two-way street, it's a conversation, and because of that conversation, you're able to grow your practice, and the people who invest are able to be more thoughtful and intentional about the ways they invest. Which brings me to my last chunk of my talk. So as the vice president of the Deutsch Foundation, I am working with my colleagues to actively shape and imagine a city where everyone is thriving and really getting clear about what is our role in that. And so part of that has required us to begin to explore and look back at the last 30 years of our grant making. And what does it mean to have helped shape a city? I bring my same complicated feelings about investing and my stories to that work as well. One of the things I'm super clear about is that we do not claim to know how to solve a problem. And no one in philanthropy should. Quite frankly, philanthropy is the juice or the lubricant to help the people who are closest to the problem do the work. And what does that look like in our daily practice? I'll say that I'm really excited that some of my colleagues are here, and I think we should have our own Creative Mornings. The philanthropic edition, because we have stories that need to be told as well, and we need to listen a lot more. I also realize that some people in the room are probably like, "What is she talking about?" It may feel like German, so I'm hoping that in our Q&A I can talk a little bit about what is philanthropy, and what does that mean in this city. As a human being, us, investing in other human beings, I encourage all of us to think about what brings us to that work. I think a lot about my grandparents' dreams. I actually don't think about that home. I think about what got them into that place. I think about my friends who decided to invest in my future. And what does that mean for me, wanting to invest in my friends' futures today? I think about the importance of using our voices even when we're afraid. I think a lot about what does it mean when we get to show our whole selves and bring our whole selves to our work. And I'm just really overwhelmed in this moment by people's interest in this word. And I actually want to hear from people in the room about, why you came today and how we can support each other. I'm totally going off script right now. One of the things I told Joe in the back when we first got here was that, everybody's doing their best. And I just want to acknowledge that in this space. And I think some people came to this conversation wanting to, get the bag or, and again, got some free breakfast and some coffee. So, but I think we are the bag, and I think that this word is charged, and it's definitely something that I'm still wrestling with. So, what you're seeing right now is me kind of in the middle of figuring all of that out, and I really appreciate this space to do that with you. So I'm going to close with that. I will also say I am headed to the airport right after this talk, so let's talk together now. And if you want to find me, jesssolomon.org. If you want to learn about the work that I do with the Deutsch Foundation, rwdfoundation.org. You can slide in my DMs, but maybe not. Maybe, but maybe not. And I'll stop there, and I hope that through conversation I can bring out a little bit more about what I do and what this looks like in practice. So thank you, Kira.
Thank you,
everybody.
Jess.
Raina, I want this pillow. Raina.
So I have some questions, but do you have some questions?
Oh, can I also just say Happy Black History Month?
Yeah. So actually,
And we got an extra day.
That's one of my questions. Let's start with that. When we first met, we talked about the date, and you were like, "Oh no, I have to fly to LA that day." But you felt committed to doing this talk because of the word and because it's Black History Month. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
I mean, that's essentially it. I mean, what you really saw was me wrestling with this word. Like, that was it. That was the thing. And, I'm a big fan of Creative Mornings. I was going to have us sing the Negro National Anthem, but then I realized everybody shouldn't sing that. So we won't, but we will celebrate Black History. And that was our joke when you first invited me. But no, I'm just really glad to be here.
Well, we're glad that you're here. Oh.
Please ask all the questions. I'm super nervous now, but let's go for it. Let's do it.
So in the field of philanthropy,
Yes.
can you talk about equity
Sure.
and sort of general trends? Because I know the Deutsch Foundation has really been kind of on the front end of that and making great strides. But can you talk about some of the most successful paths that you've been taking to achieve equity?
Yeah, I did not pay her to say this. This is amazing. Wow.
I'm an independent artist, so I think about this a lot.
Okay, that's real. So quickly, so for us, in our practice, what's most equitable is allowing our grantees to figure out how they will use the fund. So we provide general operating support, and we encourage other funders to create spaces for that. We also are asking ourselves who is not at the table. Oftentimes I ask grantees, who else should we be funding? Philanthropy is tricky, and my colleague, she always says, you meet one foundation, you've met one, and that's it. So, I can't necessarily speak to the entire field, but I will say that there's an emerging conversation about racial equity. I think we need to do more practicing of that internally as well, thinking about who is in leadership, thinking about who is helping direct where funds go, visiting communities that oftentimes don't get invested in unless it's a shiny fill in the blank, investing in artists, cultural workers, storytellers. I think that's critical to social justice. Yeah, thank you for that.
We have one over here. This way, over here.
Oh, hey.
Hi, thank you for sharing this morning. I would love to know how you think about the balance between philanthropy and political action, and what are the types of problems that are appropriate for philanthropy to solve, and what are the types of problems that government services, social services should be solving, and how you balance that.
Well, I don't think we solve any problems. I think we create resources for the people, the experts, the embodied experts to solve those problems. I think philanthropy and the large capital P philanthropy influences politics and policy. And I would love for us to be more radical in that or, committed to justice in that. And one of the things that we do is advocacy. So that looks like us leveraging power on behalf of people who would never be in the same room having these conversations, or using our networks to connect people to additional resources, recognizing that oftentimes, like, one investment is not enough to make that shift. But I think for us, it's more about the advocacy work, and I think that money, influences politics because we're in America.
Same side in the back.
Hello.
Hey!
Hi, how
Yes!
are you?
Fellow Terp.
So one of the things that you mentioned toward the end of the talk was just as you invest in people, communities, that you also want it to be a two-way street. Can you talk a little bit more about how you open up spaces or create structures so that those people are heard and that you get that feedback?
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I want to be clear. That's not about like, oh, well, here's a gift or here's a tickets to a show. It's really about wanting to better understand how your work is helping shape the future. And we, as far as the two-way street, it's really relational. A lot of my work is conversations with people, critical conversations, loving conversations, hard conversations. And so it's almost like a muscle that we have to work. And that's not necessarily scalable, right? So that's also a challenge. And just trying to think about how, we're in the middle of all of that, like thinking about what does that look like to create the space for generosity and reciprocity. Just yesterday, did people know about Mirror Kitchen? Right? So good. Yeah, Mirror Kitchen. Right, so good. And this is not, I'm not saying this to say feed us, but just yesterday they brought lunch. And it was so low-key and beautiful, but it was really a chance to hear about what they're up to. And one of the things I asked was, what is a challenge? And we learned about if someone is doing well and they increase their income, that can affect some benefits that they get. And so they're right back in the same spot, but maybe making a few more $1,000s, and that's crazy. And you know that, but to hear that from people who you were investing in, that actually opened up a larger conversation, right? So it's like, oh, well, we need to talk some more, right? Like, it's clear that there are other things that we need to figure out how to support beyond just the grant. Like, what other relationships or conversations or policy can we help influence? So it's really just asking the questions. And that takes courage, because sometimes it's scary to ask a question because you'll get an answer back. So thank you.
2 more questions on the same side, and then I'm going to jump over to the other side.
Because the east side is popping.
Hi, Jess.
I'm west side, so hi.
Hey, girl. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
First of all, I think we should do a chorus of Lift Every Voice and Sing because, spaces need to be blessed.
Okay.
But also, question, what are you reading and what books do you keep on revisiting?
Oh, man. Dang. Okay. I'm reading Race After Technology by Ruha Benjamin. Digital equity is one of our areas of focus. So there are 60,000 households in Baltimore that don't have access to internet. I'm gonna just let that hang out there. And we've been working for over a decade at the grass tops and grassroots to really address and identify the challenges around making sure people have internet, because it connects to education, work, and it's racist, right? So I'm reading that, and it's a page turner. And I keep revisiting Sisters of the Yam by Bell Hooks. Oh, yes, Sisters of the Yam. And I don't get through it because it's so hard, it's so real, because she's talking about healing and dealing with our own pain and like family trauma and generational trauma, and it's like, yes, girl, but I can't. So I keep putting it away. And it's a small book, so, you know, check it out.
Over here again.
Hi, Jess.
Hi.
Hi. My question is about disinvestment. How do you make decisions to withdraw or reduce investment in either people or
Yeah.
opportunity?
Let's talk about it. Okay. So Capital P Philanthropy, they're foundations that will go all in forever, right? Like, we're gonna fund this children's choir into perpetuity. And then there are foundations who say, this is a 1-year grant, this is a 3-year grant, this is, you know, and then that can look different. So it can start with a pot of money that would decrease over time. So those are just some different ways that philanthropy chooses to invest and disinvest. And I know we are always thinking about creating a tailored approach. So it's a lot of factors. So it's what the ask is and what the work is, because some things aren't forever, right? So what the work is, it's what is available to be invested, and it's the work. It's, you know, really thinking about, is this something that is aligned with us, that we want to stay in the game for a year or longer? And we have those conversations early and often. So we don't walk in like, hey, girl, we about to give you this grant. No, it's like, hello, you know, this is the agreement. We're going to check in a year, see where we are, and we're going to go until this, you know. And then it's also relationships. Sometimes we find that we missed the mark. We got it wrong. We actually need to go deeper instead of pulling out. And so we tend to be flexible in that way. But it's not easy. It's not easy telling someone that this is the end of the road. It's not easy supporting someone and them still not being able to meet the goal. And that, you know, that's really hard. So it's definitely an art and not necessarily a science for us.
We probably have time for one more question. I want to do it if there is one. If not, I've got lots of questions. Okay. All right. Oh, here we go.
Hey, Jess. How are
Hi,
you?
I'm well.
I'm cohort 71 from AU. so-
What?
Yeah, nice to see
Grad
you.
school, man. So many people in all parts of my life. Good to see you.
Good to see you. So I'm working on a project right now with a big foundation, and one thing that I'm looking at is trauma-informed practices. And I think that one thing that I'm finding a lot of is that, you know, with something like trauma, you have to balance, like, how are you being sure that, like you were talking about, you're ensuring that you're doing with the folks who are most affected, right? And so I'm curious what trends like equity and trauma and other, you know, informed practices you're seeing are starting to pop up that are important, and also that are a space for potential, you know, rubs to come up in the philanthropic space.
I feel like in this space, there's just a lot of buzzwords, right? Like, I feel like equity is lost the charge around it. What's the future equity word? Somebody in here figure it out. Let us know. What's the next word beyond equity? As far as trends, I feel like that's where we are right now. Like, we are square in the middle. Oh, we are square in the middle of notions of equity. I don't really use the word trauma. Like, I understand what trauma-informed care is. That's not something the word that comes naturally in my mouth. And I actually wonder, how does language keep us in a certain place, right? How can we acknowledge the trauma, but also posit that there's something else? And how can people in relationship to power use new language. So I don't even know if I have an answer to trends, but I know that those words are increasingly becoming hard for me to process, just in general. Thank you.
So
Kira?
everyone, can we please thank Jess for being here with us this morning?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question for you, but
Yes.
first, when I have everyone's attention. Next month, our speaker is Steve Shu. He's the chef owner of Ekibin. He's going to be speaking about identity. So mark your calendars for March 27th. We'll be at the North Avenue Market. So there'll be video games in the morning. Yay.
Nice.
So yeah, that's going to be March 27th. All right, so when we first met, Jess, we were like exchanging confirmation and contact information and everything, and you had said, I've had the same cell phone number since age 16, and there should be an award for that.
I do. You remember that? That's so funny.
So just giving you stuff to take on the plane with you.
So when I call AT&T about my bill, I'm going to say, I got an award, so y'all need to give me a discount on my phone bill. Thank you so much. Y'all are hilarious. Oh, my God.
And then the last question that we have for you, kind of taking from a podcast that Mario and I both really love called Code Switch. If you haven't heard it, just a plug for that for no reason at all, other than we love it. They asked their guests at the end, what song is giving you life right now?
I revisited People Every Day by Arrested Development. Right? That song is so good and timeless and just a beautiful story about life, about Black life. And I'm into it. That's giving me life right now. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, y'all. Have an amazing day. Thank you so much. Thank you.
She has to leave for real, though, so please contact her the ways that